Let's take another look at graphing equations using a quick graph method. Today we're going to practice a little more on finding x and y intercepts in order to do a quick graph. Remember that you only need 2 points in order to graph a line, so we can accomplish this by finding these points that fall on the x and y axis. If you were given the intercepts, and we'll do the easy ones first. If you don't have graph paper, you can do a rough sketch because we're just, again, getting an estimated graph of a line with this. If I tell you that your x-intercept equals 2 and your y-intercept equals 4, we can graph those 2 points. Why? Because the x-intercept is a point on the x-axis, and here it is here, 2. And that point, the coordinates of that point would be 2, 0. And I could look at a point on my y-axis as being 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's my point on the y-axis, which that set of coordinates would be 0, 4. And now that I have 2 points, I connect the dots. And there's the graph of that line. So let's try a couple. Do a couple of rough sketches, and we'll do the ones that are easiest to start with because they're already given. So I will be telling you what your x and y intercepts are, and you just go ahead and graph. We can also talk about recognizing the slope of the line as we do these. In my first one, my x-intercept, which is a point on the x-axis, y-axis, we're going to find -3, counting from the origin, 1, 2, 3. And then we find our y-intercept, which is a point on the y-axis, and that counts up, 1, 2, 3, 4. Coordinates here were -3, 0. And my coordinates here were 0, 4. One falls on the x-axis, one falls on the y-axis. Now that I have plotted those points, I draw a line through them, and here is the graph of this line. Since my line is rising from left to right, this has a positive slope. So we're able to use what we've talked about in a previous lesson and applying it to being able to read something on the coordinate plane. Next problem. My x-intercept is -2, point on the x-axis. My y-intercept, 1, 2, 3, 4, -5 on my y-axis. I have 2 points, and I connect those. And again, some of you are forgetting to connect. And none of these are going to be, right now at least, none of these will be horizontal or vertical. They'll all be with some sort of a slope to them. And this one going downhill, not my best line, but is a negative slope. And again, like I said, we're only doing rough sketches. So those are the easy ones. The intercepts were given to you. On to the ones where we have to do a little bit of work. And it's not much work. We're going to be able to find the intercepts by setting the other or opposite variable to 0. If I want to find my x-intercept, I'm going to replace y with 0. Again, I mentioned last time that we know that anything times 0 is 0, and we can technically just go right to this next step, which just says that 2x is equal to 8. I'll then divide, because I'm solving for my x-intercept, and I'll find that x is equal to 4. So that, remember when y was 0, we found out x is equal to 4. And we'll graph that in a minute. On to the second one. We take that same original equation, and this time we're going to set x equal to 0. Some of you caught on to this very quickly last time, and some of you looking at your assignment said this needed a little bit of more review. And I get my y is equal to 2. So when x was equal to 0, that's what we set it at, and we had the solve for y, we got y equal to 2. So let's go ahead and graph. We have X is 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Y is 2, 1, 2. And again, let's see if my line could come just a little bit better this time. No guarantees. And well, that's a little bit better. And there's my graph. Once again, this one's going downhill, so it has a negative slope. I'm really focusing on tying in old lessons with new as a review, so it's good to be able to recognize that. An additional problem. Again, we should do a couple of these just to be sure, and if you've got this already, good. We'll add something new to the mix in a little bit. I kept the rules here for you to remember, and I'm going to go right into that second step. If y is equal to 0, I know that eliminates that middle term there. So I'm just going to divide both sides by -3, and I find that x is equal to -2. When I had y as 0, I got an x value of -2. Now let's take that same equation, and if x is equal to 0, that eliminates and leaves me with 2y is equal to 6, and I'll divide by 2. You can write out the step with the 0 in it if it helps you, but we know that it will cancel out. Now that I have my x and y intercepts, let's go to our graph. X is -2, -2, 0, and I have 0, 1, 2, 3. And I connect, and I notice that once again, rising from left to right, positive slope. Again, they weren't asking us for slope, but again, I told you that I'd be reinforcing it. On to one more problem on this type. Again, looking at this, we see that we have to solve for our x-intercept. It doesn't really matter which one you solve for first. I'll divide both sides by -4, and I find my x-intercept to be equal to -1. Now when x is equal to 0, it eliminates and I don't have to do any work. Y is just equal to 4. Time to graph. X is -1. Y is 4. And we connect. Now we should be careful because sometimes we'll see that we'll have negatives. If I were to give you something like 5y, I'm sorry, 5, let's change that. Let's start. And again, we're going to keep them in standard form. 5x minus y equals, we'll say 5. Well, if I solve for x, all right, 5x is equal to 5, so x is equal to 1. But when I solve for y and x is equal to 0, I'm going to get -5, y is equal to 5. So I'll use that property of opposites, or divide by -1, and we'll see, we'll get the opposite. So always be careful because this sign in between said I had a -y. Now, we're going to move on in our next section to slope-intercept form, which is probably something that you're all very familiar with, where we're going to take our equation and put it into y is equal to mx plus b form, if it's not already there. And then we'll graph our slope, and then we'll graph our y-intercept, and that's another form of quick graph. So that will be our mission for our next class. So today was really just a review because I hadn't done a formal lesson and I wanted to be sure everyone understood. So next class, slope-intercept form quick graph.